The Mail on Sunday, don't panic. Now ministers hire filing clerks to guard the borders. That's the ongoing Heathrow issue. What else have we got here? Sunday Telegraph, Cameron's radical plan to abolish jobs red tape. Many more stories to talk about, lots and lots of politics and economics. So it's great to have Gillian Tett here and great to have David Aaronovitch. David, I was just watching your face during the news about Chelsea, and I have to say, it was a picture. I guessed for a second you're not a natural Chelsea man.
I am a Tottenham Hotspur season ticket holder. We are out of the Champions League, despite coming fourth because of this Chelsea victory. And all I've heard since I got up this morning is people celebrating what, for me, is a really sad morning.
Well, can I just say your face was very, very funny. Thank you. Anyway, Gillian, let's start with...
Don't ask me about football.
I won't ask you about football, but I will ask you about the Euro crisis and all of that. There's acres and acres and acres of stuff in the papers which, for many people, will be quite confusing.
Absolutely, and it's just as well that the stuff is there because this is an incredibly important moment. I think actually George Osborne puts it quite well, the headline that Sunday Times has put on his comment piece, which is, this is injury time, Europe has to act now. Basically, we really are at a crossroads. They're either going to have to make up and create some kind of workable union, or they're going to have to break up, or at least let something like Greece go.
And it's very interesting, David, that you go through the papers and the division between the people who say the Eurozone is going to fall to pieces and a good thing too, that's inevitable, and those who say no, we must have a federal Europe, has never been starker.
It's a really interesting moment of division. I mean, here in the Mail we have the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Nigel Lawson, who is very big on the "I told you so's."
Yeah.
And what he's saying is this idea that you can have this United States of Europe and a stable Eurozone, as it says, he says it is complete nonsense. In other words, the very thing that the government is saying that now needs to happen, not least in order for the British economy, is what Lawson's saying is absolutely impossible and is a pipe dream and cannot happen. And this does, as you say, mark a complete division, mostly within the Conservative ranks, about what the future holds. I think Labour is fairly united in the idea that actually that such a united Europe without us should go ahead.
Yes, and there's a very striking, you've got here Sunday Times editorial. The Sunday Times really means it when they devote an entire half page. We're struggling to get it here. There we go.
Yeah,
well done,
absolutely.
Gillian.
There we go.
Now look at that. The United States of Europe. Now the Sunday Times, as being, a very, very Eurosceptic paper in many ways, is now calling for the United States of Europe, minus Greece, I have to say. And a lot of people on the Conservative side are saying, well, we may not like it in this country, we may not be part of it, but it's now inevitable.
Absolutely. I think there's a recognition that, as many critics have said right from the get-go, if you're going to have a monetary union, you need to have some kind of fiscal union as well. Otherwise, it simply is not going to make sense in the medium term. And there's another column from Liam Halligan, who is a former colleague at the Financial Times, who's been writing in the Sunday Telegraph. He's now a hedge fund manager, basically saying that, people were pointing this out, way back at the beginning of the Eurozone project, that the difficulties of trying to run a single currency without having some kind of fiscal union and the ability to transfer taxes across borders to level out differences that tend to emerge. If you look at America, that's basically how the American system works. So the kind of gaps you have, say, between Florida or Dakota, between New York and, say, the Rust Belt areas, are just as big as they are in the Eurozone, but you have the ability to actually try and run it as a single union.
I think we should just say that Sunday Times editorial is a remarkable thing. When I saw it, my eyes stretched.
Yes.
So, I mean, this comes from the very if you like, the solar plexus of Euroscepticism.
Yeah.
This demand for and belief in the European Union without us. But it does actually have a very substantial problem for us. Let us imagine for a moment that such a thing were to happen and it were to succeed. Then you would have an incredibly powerful integrated Europe. It's hard to imagine right now, granted, without us in it and without obviously Greece in it. I mean, 20 years down the road, if then we could imagine situations in which people would say we have to join it.
But this is really calling for a single country called Europe, saying this is the only. It's a heck of a moment.
Exactly, or a single region. And in many ways, one could argue that the most effective way to deal with a country like Greece, if you are going to keep it in the actual union, would be to turn it into, say, like the giant Club Med of Europe, and give German pensioners vouchers to go down and spend time in Greece, and actually try and create a balancing sort of, system that way.
Oh,
and actually,
the papers are also full of stuff from novelists saying how terrible it is that their beloved Greece is being treated like this.
Yeah.
It's quite funny in a way, and full of the phrase, the Greeks are a very proud people.
well, look at how, say, Florida within the United States operates. I mean, they act as a kind of holiday place for people from elsewhere to go down and have holidays. That's kind of what you need to be moving towards if you're going to make the Eurozone actually work. Yeah. But of course it's very difficult because you have a lot of nationalism rising right now. You have a lot of people saying, well, actually, we're not sure we want to end up being, say, just the beaches for Europe or something like that.
Well, for a lot of people, it means the end of democracy. I mean, forget democracy. I was talking to somebody from Ireland who was saying, the last Irish budget was discussed in the Bundestag before it was discussed in the Dáil. I mean,
that was probably the right place for it.
Well, the great irony, of course, is that a project that was supposed to heal the wounds from World War II and bring countries together politically may actually end up splitting them. And if you look at the kind of language and rhetoric that's coming out in the papers, what the Greeks are saying about the Germans and vice versa, and look at the opinion polls, and another key theme of the papers this morning has been the rise of both the far left and the far right in Greece. That indicates that this project that was designed to heal the wounds may actually end up reopening them.
David, you've chosen a column by Andrew Rawnsley from The Observer.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, what Andrew Rawnsley is saying is everybody's having a go at Merkel. It's quite interesting. Internationally, everyone's having a go at Merkel. It's her strategy which is deemed not to be successful, although it's not totally clear to me what the actual difference is between her and, say, Françoise Hollande. And in this country, everyone's having a go at the government, almost exactly in a kind of mirror image of that. So Cameron's having a go at Merkel on the international scene for being too austere, and everybody's having a go at Cameron in the national scene for being too austere. It's quite an interesting sort of political moment, and I think Rawnsley is keen to suggest to people, look, hold on a second, before you start knocking the Germans, you'd better look at what's actually worked for them and why it's worked.
Yeah.
And we have this strange moment from this... sorry, you want to go into that?
I was going to say, apart from that, I was going to come back to one fact which is actually occurring amid all this. It's going back to Liam Halligan's column, which, of course, we're seeing the banking system coming under growing stress. And there's one chart I would absolutely highlight, which is looking at Greek bank deposits and seeing the kind of flow that's coming out of the banks right now. And that's the reason why, essentially, we're at a crunch point, because we're already seeing signs of, I wouldn't say panic, but people pulling money out and the banking system coming under growing stress and pressure.
Right. Okay. And we've had this summit which seems to have achieved very, very little in the States, apart from the strange image of Obama and Cameron having their little side chat while both on parallel treadmill.
Well, what I want to know is
running machines.
A, why were they only running for 25 minutes? I mean, that's not a lot of exercise. B, how much do they actually manage to talk? Because if they were walking very slowly, then maybe they could have proper discussion. But I don't know about you. When I'm jogging properly, I can't talk about world affairs that easily.
Well, presumably there's a lot of one-upmanship about which one of them is running fast and still able to talk, and which one is wheezing too much.
Well, I have to tell you, every Saturday I go running with Steve Richards of The Independent, and we do talk about everything. We set the world to rights.
I'm not sure
that's going to make everyone watching this who's not actually... everyone running this morning on Sunday who's not been jogging yet, you can feel really guilty.
Right. Sunday Telegraph, you've chosen, next story is from the front page of the Sunday Telegraph.
Yeah, this is... you mentioned earlier the Sunday Times story, and this is the Sunday Telegraph story. Notice what they have in common. Cameron's radical plan to abolish jobs red tape. This is the Beecroft report, and this is the... But we know there is a recurrent theme in government. Whenever it's got a problem, it says, we're going to abolish red tape, we're going to make things better that way. It doesn't involve any expenditure, may even cut some. And you pointed out the Sunday Times article, front page, which is Cameron's going to be doing these things with these new replacement ASBOs, which magically, by having a lower level of proof and evidence required, is going to cut antisocial behaviour. Now, what did that remind you of, Andrew?
I think you've got the answer at the bottom of the Sunday Telegraph.
Tony Blair set for political return, to which the argument might be eye-catching initiatives he already has, in some ways, returned. That speaks to a kind of slightly different agenda, but it is a moment when the government is pretty desperate to say, look, we've got lots of ideas still, and ideas that exist outside this economic series of problems that we've got, and the Sunday front pages are the places to put them.
Gillian, we need some light relief on this kind of fairly grim-looking day, and you have achieved it.
I would like to choose one which I think is actually quite important, which is a very nice column by Suzanne Moore about the death of Donna Summer. And she's pointing out that the great thing about Donna Summer and that disco fever in the 1970s was that it actually had a very coalescing effect. It brought people together. It brought together black and white. It brought together gay and straight. And it really helped to change social attitudes. And if you just think back 4 decades and think how much difference there is today in terms of people's attitudes towards homosexuality and racism, you can say, yes, that was down to political change. Actually, I think the fact that everyone was boogieing on down the dance floor to Donna Summer and things like that probably had as big an impact. So if you want a reason to feel cheerful, we can actually celebrate just how much more tolerant we've all become.
You can't be a disco era girl.
I was,
Gillian.
yeah.
Really?
In 1970s, our high school,
Really?
I was boogieing on down. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. It's something to feel happy about because, you know, we should celebrate what we've actually achieved in recent decades.
Absolutely we should. I have to ask you about Chelsea. We started talking about it, but it was an astonishingly kind of nail-biting climax. Whatever your team...
There is actually, and I think we can see the kind of typical holding the cup aloft. There is an incredibly filmic story here, which is essentially a team of has-beens, of elderly people who have been written off, suddenly come back and come good. Well, that's enough of Alistair Darling and Tony Blair and David Miliband's return. So that's a really cheap journalist beginning, isn't it?
You define elderly as the age of 30, but anyway.
34 in the case of...
Absolutely
however,
geriatric.
that was the case with the Chelsea team. The core of the Chelsea team was essentially shoved out at the beginning of the season.
They did well after they dumped the manager, of course.
They dumped the manager, and the manager who previously, the manager they've got at the moment, who previously had not starred even with West Brom, came in, brought the old guard back, the ill-considered old guard, and they have won in the FA Cup and now the Champions League. Curse them.
Curse them. Gillian, just when the news was coming on, you were very interested in the divorce story from
Well, no, I was actually being
California.
optimistic again because it's, you know, it's the beginning of summer. It was actually the marriage story of the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, who just got married.
Yes.
But aside from that, there's actually a fascinating story that was covered last week, was about the rising numbers of marriages and divorces. We wrote about it in the Financial Times ourselves, in fact, on Saturday. I don't have it with me. But basically saying that as this extraordinary IPO is taking place, creating lots and lots of billionaires, never mind the millionaires, not only are you seeing a surge in the amount of marriages going on right now, but also a rising number of divorces, as people say, well, you know what, I've stuck with you for years and actually I'm getting fed up.
And we've both got enough money to go.
Exactly. So divorce lawyers are basically, you know, preparing for this, but also lots of marriages as well, and that's a happy thing to celebrate.
Happy thing to celebrate.
And even today's paper here, we've got a piece about this extraordinary new culture now in Silicon Valley on the back of this whole Facebook IPO. People becoming fantastically rich and yet celebrating with beer and onion rings and trying to downplay their wealth.
Yeah, very interesting. David, a final thought.
You might have thought that Leveson marked the end of a certain kind of tabloid coverage. So I'm bound to point out, if we look at this is Wayne Rooney on holiday. Look at the rather unflattering photographs. In fact, maybe I shouldn't even be showing you this.
Too late. Too late.
But on the left here, we have, down at the bottom, we have a picture of the Rooney baby, pixelated. Now, this is from the People. In the Sunday Mirror, owned by the same people, Trinity Mirror, we have exactly the same pictures with the baby unpixelated. In other words, you can see the face. And it makes you realise that even now, after all this discussion about press ethics, etc., we are in a state of terminal confusion about what can and what can't be shown and what should and shouldn't be shown. I thought this sort of thing was supposed to have stopped. And still there it is, and presumably people are still enjoying enormously the sight of celebrities in their swimming costumes.
Yeah, yes. It's big times for the newspaper world, isn't it, Gillian?
Absolutely, yes, on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah, of course. Right, thank you both very much for now. After